We're the Baldwin family, and we're members at Grace Harbor Church. We were living in Providence, Rhode Island, for about 10 years. I was working there as a general surgeon, and it was time for me to move on from my job. And so we started looking for jobs around the area, and I had a great job opportunity right here in New Bedford, Massachusetts. So as part of the process, we really, as members of Grace Harbor Church in Providence, we knew that if that church was 45 minutes away, that long-term, if we lived in New Bedford, that would not be a good fit, because we wanted to live and work and go to church in the same community. And so as part of the process, I looked around at different churches in the area and just wasn't able to find something that I felt comfortable with and that I could come back to Liz and say, this would be a great place for us to call our spiritual home. Somewhere along the line of that interview process, Kevin McKay, the pastor of Grace Harbor Church in Providence, came up to me and said, hey, we've got a guy who's coming out here to have lunch. I'd like you to come and meet him. And his name's Morgan. He's coming here from Texas, and he's interested in planting a church in New Bedford. So as a result of that, we had already been a part of a church plant. And so we kind of had experienced that before, and we were up for doing that again.
The Lord had kind of used that to help me surrender some idolatry of friendships and relationships. So I think that while I was sad to leave Grace Harbor Providence, there was part of me that just kind of knew this was the right thing to do. And so it just seemed like the Lord had made that really clear that we needed to move. While I was hesitant and not particularly excited about leaving a church that we had really loved and grown super fond of, it did seem like that's where the Lord was leading. It gave me a new passion for and a desire to share the gospel. I had gotten really comfortable in Providence, just kind of being part of our church and having kids and being a stay-at-home mom. And so that was really exciting. And it was really encouraging and convicting to seeing people who were literally going to move across the country to come and do this. And we were going to move, 35 minutes or something. For a long time, we had wrestled with should we be doing something else? We had talked about doing missions before, and so in some ways it felt like that was a way to live out that passion or that desire, in a place that was less glamorous. You don't have to go across the world, I guess, to be willing to sacrifice for the gospel.
At some point along the process of starting this up, that you intended to move to New Bedford and die in New Bedford.
Right, yeah.
So that really left an impression on me.
Yeah.
We're gonna see whatever this turns out to be, we're gonna see it through, and we're gonna keep going. The surrounding area around New Bedford actually is a medically underserved area within the United States as well, but I think it's a much more spiritually underserved area. Although the whole southern New England area, including Rhode Island, I think is spiritually underserved. This area in New Bedford, even more so than Providence. I was a little intimidated by that, to be honest with you, because we already felt like the Christian community was so small in Providence. And I wondered, will there be any, community here in New Bedford, and what's going to happen with this plant.
So we started out as a very small group who did not know each other, and kind of forced together friendships, and not people that you would necessarily be oh, that person is going to be my friend, that person is going to be my friend. First of all, that ended up being a much sweeter group of people than I expected. So I think that the Lord used that just to demonstrate to me that people with a common desire and goal and a focus on the Lord can do things even if there's not the natural affinity that the world says you need to develop friendship. Out of that culture, we have built a culture which values placing the gospel and placing Christ at the center of it. So there's people that are very different from one another who have genuine relationships and are transparent and vulnerable with one another.
So I just think about the way that God knows us. He knows all of our problems and all of our faults, and then continues to love us. So there's this way that over the years I've seen that we've been growing in that. As we build more and more history together, we know more and more about each other. Some of those things are awesome and some of those things are not awesome, and yet we still persist and love each other in those relationships. So
we have fostered a community where people really come in and feel like they can be open and genuine about who they are. And I think there's a lot of places where people can't do that in the world, but also in the church. I think just knowing what God's grace is and then demonstrating that through relationship is really powerful.
Just to see the way that people are inviting each other into their homes just on a weekly basis outside of Sunday mornings, constantly inviting others over and into our homes and into other people's homes that are different from us. Realize that you can build relationships with people that are different from you, with the commonality being your relationship with Christ. So
Grace Harbor has modeled well equipping people and then like putting them in places where they can use the skills that God's given them.
an area that I feel like I'm constantly needing to grow in and am still growing in is learning to do the things that I'm doing because I'm being obedient to God rather than because of other external rewards or things that we might get from doing that. And I think New Bedford's a great place to learn that for me because it's not a place where, you know, you meet somebody, you talk with them, you invite them to church. That's not, it doesn't happen like that. I kind of just felt like, oh, I met somebody, I talked to them, I invited them to church, they would just come. That's just kind of not how I think this community works in this moment in history. And so I've had to like settle into like the long game.
But I think that is in contrast to the culture, especially the New England culture. And so once you experience that in the church, it's hard to not then want to experience that outside.
I dream of the day when this church building is full. I looked out on Easter from the stage, you know, holding that guitar, and I thought about that little Bible study that we started out of your house, and then I looked out and saw almost every seat filled, and I got pretty excited about that. Not that the goal is to like have a big church, but in a community where no one's heard the gospel, the more people that are here, the more they're going to hear it, and we're a church that preaches the gospel. So
I pray for the people that like I'm discipling, or that people who are being discipled or being counseled or going through training to become like the leaders of those classes and to become the leaders of those things, whether that's here or in another church plant, you know, to go through that and then have that experience and then be able to lead other people in that, especially people who are from here, from the city, going out and being able to do that. I think that would be amazing. And just being able to see the fruit of the work and the training and the equipping go out further.
So rather than us moving to a place and joining a church, it was more like we moved to a place and God brought us a church, which was really cool.